This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason. It's a real privilege to be with you today. We're real excited to have some really special folks on the show today, talking about what's really hot right now, what's really going on in the workforce around leadership, around people, and who makes up the workforce, and how to navigate the future with these different types of people. And so today we're talking about leadership's perfect storm, how to lead a multi-generational workforce and unlocking new ways of thinking that allows companies and people to thrive together harmoniously into the future. And boy, we certainly need that more than any time today. This has been a very interesting couple of years. We've had the baby boomers kind of rolling out. We've got millennials and Gen Zs taking over the workforce, and it's created some different shifts, some different ways of thinking. And so today we have the privilege of having Susan Inouye on our show. She's an expert, literally wrote the book on this. And so we're going to get some really cool, deep level understanding of this whole dynamic and what's going on and what we can do to shape how we think and plan and lead going forward. So let me tell you a little bit more about Susan. Amazing lady. She's the founder and CEO of Inouye Lowry Group, based out of Los Angeles, California. They provide executive coaching and organizational change to organizations all over the world. She's also an author of a book called Leadership's Perfect Storm. She's also a keynote speaker on leadership and managing diverse workforces that drives maximum engagement and performance. She's also been recognized as a top 10 inspiring female woman in the global business world. So without further ado, Susan, welcome to the Soar Higher podcast.
Oh, Jason, thank you very much. I appreciate you inviting me.
Oh, we're excited to have you on the show. What a super relevant topic. We're kind of turning a new chapter here. We're closing out 2024 here in a couple of weeks. We'll be moving into 2025. And, as a business coach myself, I work with a lot of different businesses around the world. And this topic, the workforce, the people, and what to do with them and how to lead them, and how things have to be different going forward is on the minds of pretty much every business owner and leader out there. So let's get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about you and your background and just kind of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, as far back as I can remember, I've always wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And so I remember volunteering at the missions, feeding the homeless on Thanksgiving Day. And, doing those things touched my heart and gave me so much meaning and purpose in my life that I look for other ways to make a difference. And that's when I discovered films, because I saw how films could literally transform people's lives. And so I ended up in the film capital of the world, Los Angeles, and I graduated with honors from the University of Southern California, but with a bachelor's in mathematics and a minor in music. I did something more practical than the arts to please my parents. But what happened is a few years later, I heard of an annual competition at the American Film Institute. It was a directing workshop for women. They were giving a small select group of women a $5,000 grant to do a 30-minute short. And I thought to myself, this is my chance. Now, when I was about to apply, I was told by someone close to the committee that they were looking for people that give them notoriety. And I wasn't really anybody famous, so I probably wouldn't get it. But tell me I can't, and I'll prove you wrong. And so I applied anyway, and I got the grant. And 5,000 wasn't a lot even back then, but my passion for transforming lives through films and telling the story of my grandfather, who was interned in the concentration camps of America during World War II, it was so strong that I raised over $500,000 in donated services and goods. I raised thousands of dollars, and I got some of the top people in Hollywood to work with me for free. And the film was called Solo. It went to festivals, it won awards, and I found myself in the office of Kathleen Kennedy, who was then the assistant to Steven Spielberg. And I thought my life would be changing forever. Well, it did, but not in the way that I anticipated. What happened is I couldn't get hired as a director. And finally, a TV producer who was a friend pulled me aside and said, Susan, it's much harder to hire a first time woman director than it is a man. And I was just crushed, but I was angry. And I remember the story of my father, who wanted to be a doctor. And they told him, forget it, because back then, no one would go to you because you were Japanese. And so he knew that no meant that people didn't KNOW what he was capable of. And so he found a way around, and he became a doctor of dentistry, an orthodontist, and a really successful one. So I knew I had to find a way around. And as I thought about making a difference in transforming lives, I thought, you know what? It starts with me transforming my own life. So I started to study deeply and fiercely with from teachers from the world of doing to teachers to the world of being. And I'll never forget one day, a business colleague, she came up to me and she said, Susan, I want some of that. And I went, well, what? She said, I've seen the positive transformation in you and I want you to coach me. I'm starting my own business. Now, back then, coaching wasn't popular. And at the time, I was in the corporate world doing sales, but she was very persistent. And so I said, okay. And as I became a better person and leader, and I coached her to do the same, it was funny. There's two things that happened. I became the number one salesperson in this national company, and she made her first million in her first year. And I will never forget, she looked at me and said, Susan, this is how you're going to make a difference in people's lives. And so I don't know. That's why I say coaching is my calling. I didn't seek to be a coach, it found me. And I've been very fortunate. I've been able to work with over 600 companies in 40 industries, everything from Fortune 500 companies to small businesses. And the past 13 years, I've been working with managers and executives on working with their younger people, their millennials, through this method called Salbona. And Salbona, at the heart of it, is really getting people to be the best of who they are and helping others to do the same. And the byproducts have been for my clients increase in profitability, sometimes by 50% in only 6 months.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What an incredible story. Your dad was now your heritage is Japanese, is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So your dad is here in the United States and he's looking for opportunities, kind of getting the door slammed on him. And then there was some biases because he was Japanese, kind of coming out of the World War II and all the sensitivities with that. But he found a way to not accept a no, right? And, when I teach sales to people, never accept a no from somebody that can't say yes, right? And I love the fact that he knew what he could do and he still found a way to get out there and be the best that he can be. And I definitely see you got that from him, right? Like you're a champion. You're somebody that's not going to give up. You're going to find a way and keep chopping down the tree until you figure it out, right? And I think that's amazing. I think that's a great example, you know, for the millennials these days, right? There's some expectation differences in these different, age groups of folks out there, and I think that's a great example there. And so I want to circle back. You said something that was very interesting to me: doing versus being. Explain that a little bit more. What is that? Let's unpack that for a minute. That seems powerful to me.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a world of where we emphasize the actions we take, what we do, and what we do and how far we rise and how successful we are. But there's the other side to doing, and so let me share with you. In the very beginning of my quest to learn more about me, Susan, I was a doer. I was driven, to do things, to kind of get to certain positions, and I would do it faster than anybody else. You give me a goal when I was in corporate America, I would get a 6 month goal, I would get it in 3. But the fact of it is, when we do, most of the times we are not understanding who we are and what drives us. It took me a long time to be able to start to look in rather than look out. Doing tends to look out to what we accomplish. Being looks into who we are. And who we are is the gifts we bring to the world, which are things we were born to naturally do. And they're different than strengths because strengths we work hard at to be competent in. But strengths take energy and effort, where gifts are effortless and they fill us with energy. And also with gifts, you do have to nurture them for them to come out. But I had no idea within me certain things that I could explore, like my good gifts, like my blind spots that kept tripping me up, my patterns, good and bad, that were, and a lot of them that I had to break and replace them with new ones. I didn't know how to do that. So when we take the journey within ourselves and we have a good coach or we have good mentors, they help us, they ask us questions that we have never been asked before. When I do a pre-coaching assignments with my clients when they first come in to do an assessment, I do an assessment with them. I ask them some deep, thought-provoking questions, and my execs will say, Susan, these are the most intimidating questions I've ever had, or these are the best questions because no one has ever asked me. Like what would you do, you know, if you knew you couldn't fail? What would you do if you didn't care what people thought about you? You know, you know, what would you do if money were not an option? And it starts to tap into us and what's heartfelt for us. And so much of the inward journey that I work with clients on is very much developing the intelligence of our heart and our body. So, yeah. So, yeah, doing versus being. And I had to learn both. I went from the world of doing and I overdid to the point where you can burn out, to I discovered the world of being. I discovered the teachers of Jack Kornfield, Pema Chodron, Deepak Chopra, people who taught me about looking in rather than looking out, and it was powerful.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say that same word. That is powerful. That's empowering, right? When you can think about things differently. It's one thing to get out there and, especially when you're younger, right? When I think back to my earlier career. I've got a daughter that's, starting to get out there in the workforce, and, it's about proving yourself. It's about working hard and, just learning and soaking it all in and kind of navigating, what you like, what you don't like. And, it's, it is about achievement. It's about, feeling like you worked hard to get your bonus or, got a promotion. And it's, there are there's this kind of very focused mindset there, to find your spot in the corporate ladder or whatever that may be, and go forth and prove yourself. It's about proving, right? And then later, you think about things a little bit differently. Like, well, man, I could do a lot of things for a lot of different people, but man, when you can focus in on really what your God given talents are, John Maxwell calls them, your five swings, right? Where if you focus on those things and you only did those five things that you are truly gifted, God-given talents and abilities that you may have that others may not have as much of, that you can move. If you just did those things all day, not to say that that's all you do, but if you just did those five things that you were truly blessed with, you would still move the needle. You would still be tapped into your passion, your energy, and fulfillment. I think a lot of people out there, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of people out there are trying to prove themselves all the time, and, trying to, outdo and compete and, jockey for something in the world. And, at the end of the day, they're just not gratified, and I see this a lot with the younger generation, right? Where they jump around a lot. They're trying to figure things out. And if that something doesn't go their way, they jump to something else and go into some other line of work or another company, and they lack the insight of really what is truly good for them, where they can add the most value and be gratified in their profession. Do you see different things, or am I the odd one here?
No, there's a lot that you said. I started to write down some stuff that I wanted to bring forward. So let's talk about millennials, especially those that millennials and two at the low end, they're around 28, and on the high end, they're about 43. And I say to my millennials who are, managers or something, and they say, Susan, well, okay, so an exec called me one day and he was very frustrated. He said, this young man has only been with us for 6 months. And yes, he's talented. But he came into my office and said, how can I have your job in 5 years? The exec said to me, I said to myself, the nerve. So my thing with millennials is do not be so anxious to rise to the next position in the company, because it's not about rising to the next position. It's about when you get there, can you sustain it and can you thrive? And if you haven't built the kind of muscle or foundation to be able to handle this kind of pressure, you will crumble. And I've seen it happen because I've been brought in to coach people that have risen very quickly. And it's like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. There's so much, because when you're not in that position is when you have to go on the journey of you. You have to, instead of looking out, you look in, and you start to get a mentor, to get a coach, to start taking leadership, programs and things like that, to understand who you are at the core. Because I'll even ask Jason executives, like, so what are your gifts? And they'll go, and I'll explain what a gift is, and they'll go, well, I don't know. We have to know who we are, because if we know who we are, then we know what we can be put into, where we'll blossom. And the more we work on ourselves, so I work with a lot of young people on the path to partner in firms. And the thing about it is that I say to them, you know what to do. I don't have to tell you. What I'm going to work on is who you are, who you need to be to get to that partnership position, so that when you get there, you can sustain and thrive in it. And we work a lot. We start with their gifts. We start with the other side to the gifts, which they're blind to, what trips them up. We start with patterns, and we start with the core of who they are. And when they start to learn about themselves, it becomes this fascination where, wow, Susan, I didn't, and it, it becomes something where they're building the strong foundation that allows them. Well, what happens is the byproduct is partnership. It's not that they go for partnership, is they develop themselves and the byproduct is partnership or the next level. And I want to say this to because in a lot of companies, what's not valued is the growth and development of our people. And I think I told you, demonstrated by some of the stories I told you in the very beginning of my life, the aha moment came for me when I became the number one sales company in this national corporation. And the business owner I was coaching, made her first million in her first year. A light bulb switch went on and said, there is a correlation between becoming the best of who we are and increased profitability. And so I say to companies out today, we've created a working world where we are, are focused on advancement or achievement rather than fulfillment. We have made achievement and advancement more valuable than fulfillment. And so we get our young people focused on the next title that they should have rather than the vision for their life, their purpose, their well being, their work life balance, their gifts, their blind spots, all these things. And so, and we don't provide opportunities for them to consider and to be compensated for, other than if you rise the ladder. And we're focused on, because I work with companies that do billable hours, we focus on billable hours and not developmental hours. And if we want our people developed, guess what? And you know this, Jason, we don't give them any time to do it within the company. So growth and development have to be a core value that is live in organizations. Because if you do this, the byproduct will be increased profitability and it will be sustainable. It won't be short-lived because, and there's so many ways we can live it. I could go on and on that subject. But when we value those other things, people now have choices. If we put aside budgets for our people annually, when I work with companies, we talk about all this, so that people are required to take something new every year that is aligned with their personal and professional goals. And they go out and take classes or training outside of the company. And they bring it back and they teach their team what they learned. Can you imagine how, all these people are going out and they're bringing new stuff in? It's exciting. And so what happens is that people are constantly growing and changing. And today we need to build cultures that embrace change because the world is changing so fast. What's new today is outdated tomorrow. The best way to create a culture that embraces change is to make growth and development a core value in your organization. Because if they're constantly changing every year by learning new things, when something like the pandemic comes along, they easily go in another direction. They go, okay, we got this. Rather than fear, rather than, being stuck, they go right along with what has to happen. So my thing is that we have to find other things to value rather than advancement. So we have choices. And focusing on development of people will give you more profits.
Yeah, when I was in the military, we had in the organization, we had a statement we always said, people first, mission always, right? It meant if you are focused on people, especially for leaders, right? If you're a leader and you're focused on your people, taking care of your people, resourcing your people, listening to your people, enabling your people, developing your people, you won't have to ask them to do their job. You won't have to ask them to work late. You won't have to ask them to do many things. They will just do it because they're invested and they know you care and they know you have their best interest at heart, right? Where you're focused on them. Another John Maxwell thing, that I routinely, mention to people is, people don't care about your company. They don't care about you as a leader and how awesome of a boss you are and how many awards you won. Nobody cares until they know how much you care about them. Am I a number here? Am I replaceable? If I don't show up on time today, am I going to get fired? Like, am I really truly valued, or am I just an end, means to an end here, right? I'm just a plug. I'm plugging the hole in the ship just to get through for another year or two, and then we'll cycle some new people in, right? And people feel like that could be the situation. They're just not going to engage. But I love what you said. And I think it's good career advice for anybody at any level, no matter if you're in a major corporation, whether you're in a small business, whether you're in a government or whatever. Focus on being your best, not achieving the next thing. That is really powerful. I really love that. And thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really powerful thing for people to take away. But I want to shift gears on you. I want to dig into the millennial side of things even deeper. You've studied this for a long time. You wrote the book on this. Where are we at with millennials right now? Obviously, millennials and Gen Zers making up a preponderance of the workforce as the baby boomers and folks are exiting out and retiring and all that kind of stuff. And I think accelerated by COVID. But where are we with this group? How are they doing? What are some of their major issues and challenges? And how do we leaders, more seasoned, experienced people in the world, how do we mentor them? How do we need to show up different for them to bring out the best in them as is kind of this newer generation? What are some of your greatest, bites of wisdom on that?
Well, one of the things, oh God, there's a lot to unpack with just what you said. I mean, first of all, I want to say that millennials are entering leadership positions. I mean, I get calls from them saying, I just got Susan VP of marketing. I had one person call me, I just got VP of marketing of an international company. And I know exactly what to do in marketing, but I don't know how to create a culture where people feel they belong. And how do you bring together all these people? And I said, don't worry, I know how to do this. um, and so one of the things I'll give some kind of advice to my older millennials, because like I said, 28 to 43, that's a wide spread here, right? And by the way, older millennials don't like younger millennials. Well, because they feel that they are not mature in the way they make decisions, and we can talk about that later too. There's some stuff there, but one of the things that when millennials do call me, the ones in their early 40s, and want my help, I let them know. I said, I'm an executive coach. I'm expensive. And they go, and when they find out how much, they go, ooh. I said, well, did you negotiate in your agreement for a budget for a coach? And they went, oh my gosh, I should have called you before. No, I didn't. So I say that to all of you out there. When you are getting promoted, when you are going into a new company and transitioning to leadership role, you need to negotiate in your agreement or contract a budget, and not a few $100s. We're talking a few $1,000s or more than a few thousand, so that so that the company can pay for you to have an executive coach. And you'll also know if the company is a really good company because they won't squawk at it. Meaning, they won't say, well, the reason we hired you is because we thought you knew the job. So if you need an executive coach, that means that you don't know how to do this. And that's not the case. What companies have to realize is the most successful people have coaches. And you don't wait until you need a coach to get one. You have one now. And that's why people that are successful become more successful, right? So that's one of the things I say to my millennials. Now, the other thing that I say to my boomers is that you are valuable. However, the world is changing. And The world today needs a different kind of leader than the leader of the past. And so we must be willing to start to pass the baton. I have so many boomers that are it's so hard for them to pass the baton. I mean, the company usually says to them, well, you're going to have to retire. And a lot of companies have put age on. By the age of 68, you have to retire. And they're going, really? I mean, and then they'll come back as consultants and everything else. So it's really hard for them to let go. So for my boomers, I have to work on them to let go, because if they don't let go, they still want to control the situation. And they have to realize that the generation millennials, they see the world through a different lens. And it's important that the generations prior, Gen X's and boomers, especially boomers, because boomers are the ones that are being forced to retire. But they don't want to retire, okay? And so I'll give you something that was really cool. There was a study done by the Gallup organization. And what they found in this study is that the leadership of the past compared to where leadership has to be now goes from my paycheck to my purpose. This is how millennials are changing it. From my paycheck to my purpose, from my satisfaction to my development, from my boss to my coach. Bosses today need to be coaches. From my annual review to my ongoing conversation. By the way, I hate annual reviews because you wait to the end of the year to tell somebody what they need to work on. Okay. From my weaknesses, millennials say focus on my strengths. Those are my gifts. And from my job to my life, they look at it as their life. And they're right, because generations prior used to just compartmentalize everything. You're one person at work, you're one person at home. And it is so hard to do. You can't be yourself. And millennials want to be themselves. They want to bring their gifts into the workplace. They want to get the results you want using their gifts and doing it in their way with your guidance, as long as you don't talk down to them and lecture them.
Well, I think you brought up some really great points, right? And just how millennials think different, right? Because millennials grew up with people that are exiting out of the workforce or may have already exited out of the workforce, and they saw their parents just work long hours, be high achievers, and then get fired or laid off, or, one bad decision by a leader in a company and they didn't get treated well, or they didn't get a bonus, or they, whatever. They saw their parents, putting in blood, sweat, and tears, and not in making sacrifices to be at a soccer game, sacrifices to be on a phone call during a vacation or whatever. Those little things add up over, a lifetime of a career. And then what was it all for? Did the sacrifices outweigh the benefits? Did you change the world? Did you, you know, get treated fairly in return? Did you, get extra time off for, taking a day on your vacation to talk to a client that's mad about something? Like and they see companies just, and their perception is squeezing the blood out of people as much as they can. And they see this and they're like, the benefit didn't outweigh the sacrifice. I'm not doing that. Like, they saw their parents be unhappy. They saw them have to be different people at different times. I remember, even in my career, like, it was frowned upon to receive a personal call at work. Work is work, business is big. It was frowned upon to go home and talk about work. Like, no, you're home. Don't talk about work. We're going to do other things, right? And in today's world, things just move too fast. Things are too integrated. The technology is collaborative in a way that where you can't separate work from home and personal. extremely hard to do that. And millennials seem to be, and the younger generation seems to be, like you said, more focused on quality of life, you know, not killing myself in my career. I want to grow. I want to be developed. I want time and attention from people to continuously develop me, not crack the whip on me every time I walk in the front door. And that's a different shift. And so how do you help organizations if I'm a leader and we're going through some different dynamics of change and leadership, coming and going and different clients and, demands from the consumer, all of these expectations are changing around us. What is some of your best advice in how to engage that? And in what balance or what a good outcome is as we go into the future?
Yeah, let me share with you that gosh, okay, I can go several ways on this one. Let me say to you that in the many years that I've been working with organizations and executives and speaking at conferences and things like that, I've heard many things that millennials need, but there are three things that keep echoing, and that is, I want to feel heard, I want to use my gifts, and I want to have meaning and purpose in my life. And when I speaking at keynoting at conferences and stuff, and I ask, how many of you out there want that too? Every hand goes up, because it's not a generational need, it's a human need. You see, generations prior to millennials, they wanted that too, but it was a different time and they just sucked it up and did what they were told. They became sort of order takers. Millennials don't want to be order takers. And so, in order for us as leaders to, first of all, they want to feel heard. So, what do we need to do? We need to connect and receive. They want to use their gifts. So, what do we as leaders need to do? We need to see their gifts. They want to have meaning and purpose in their lives. So, what do we have to do as leaders? We have to create a culture where they feel a part of something greater than themselves. And through the aspect of Salbona, we do it through the leaderships. And there are 5 of them. And so, would it be okay if I share them? Is that
Yeah, absolutely. I was hoping you would.
so? We have to go from control to connect and receive. And I'll do a little bit more after, but I'll just name them: from conformity to see and accept, from expectations to intentions, from authority to authenticity, from bottom line myopia to belonging. So if you look at the first one, from control to connect and receive, Jason, we come from an era prior, from to millennials of command and control. That if I give you a directive, you do it. You take my order. And, we kind of sucked it up and did it, even though we may have had a better idea. Millennials won't put up with it. Um, and so we have to go from control to connect and receive. And connect is not connectivity or communication. It's how I feel when I'm with you. How do I feel when I'm with you? And receptivity is a very overlooked trait of leadership. We are taught it's better to give than receive, but receiving is just as important, because a person has to be able to receive with openness people's thoughts, their ideas, um, their criticism, their praise, their help. And if we are not an open vessel that is open to receiving it with curiosity, and we have a lot of judgment within us, the other person can feel that. And so in being able to connect and receive becomes so important. And there's many practices that I do with my clients in order to get them there so that they're truly listening rather than pretending to listen while their mind is somewhere else. And by the way, millennials can tell because they have said to many leaders, I know you're not listening to me. Your mind is somewhere else. I mean, they're just that blunt. you know. Um, the second one is from conformity to see and accept. Millennials have a saying, one size does not fit all. They want to be considered unique and not part of a big herd. And so they want you to see them for who they are. They want you to see their gifts, their blind spots, their strengths, their weaknesses, their genius, and accept all of it, good and bad. Because we found that when we see and accept people for who they are, they see and accept us for who we are, and a different conversation unfolds. Not one where we're lecturing to each other, but one where we're listening and learning from each other. And so being able to see the gifts, which is at the center of Salbona leadership, becomes very important. The third one is from expectations to intentions. Expectations are our rules of how things should be done. And when people don't meet our expectations, is a lot of pain. And it's like, I expect that if I give you training, you'll be able to do your job. And now you make a bunch of mistakes and I have a lot of pain. And it's something we can't control either. But intentions are something we can control because they're within us. My intention is to help you be the best you can be by giving you training. Now, if you make mistakes, my intention is to help you be the best you can be. So let's talk about the mistakes, what went wrong, what we can do better. There's not a lot of pain for me, and I'm helping you. So I'll never forget, this is a story of one of my clients. I went to the head of HR because he was wondering how coaching was going with one of his people on the path to partner. And he said to me, well, I'll just say, give her the name of Judy. Is Judy meeting your expectations? And I said, I don't have expectations. And he looked at me and said, what? I said, look, if I had expectations, I'd probably have a lot of pain. Besides that, I wouldn't be open to what I could offer her. If she's late for a session and I expect her to be on time, we'd be talking about how she was wrong for being late rather than talking about the breakdown she had and what's going on in her life. And all of a sudden he started taking notes. He said, I never heard about this, but it sounds good. Um, yeah. So from expectation to intentions, the fourth one is from authority to authenticity. Millennials are the first generation that didn't have to go through authority to get information. And that is huge because holding information used to be a way of holding power for leaders. I have the information that you don't have. But today, as you know, the younger generation can get information before we even have it, right? And so they don't respect you just because you have a title. What they do respect is authentic knowledge, wisdom, experience that they can learn from and are willing to learn from as long as you're not lecturing down to them. And they feel like they can talk to an executive the same way they can talk to their friends because that's being authentic. And they can also do it in a respectful way. And the last leadership is from bottom line myopia to belonging. Gosh, it's interesting, Jason. Today, I've come into so many companies where their motivation, they'll say, can you sit in on one of our annual conferences we have? And from the top comes from the CEO, all right, we're going to be $1 billion company. We're going to do everything to be $1 billion company. We're going to get up sales. We're going to do this. And the people, especially the young people, are going, yeah, well, like, how much of that $1 billion is going to be in our pockets? Like, how motivational is that, right? young people, they want to belong to something greater than themselves. They want to know that they're valued. They want to know that the success of the company, that they had a part in the success by getting you the results you need, using their gifts and doing it in their way. They want to be able to bring their ideas and innovate and do creative things. All those things are the byproduct to get you to $1 billion. But you don't focus on the $1 billion, you focus on them and creating this culture of belonging.
That is powerful. I love those 5 tenets there. It just really kind of simply just binds those core things together of really what's most important, where people are, how you need to be a leader, and the shift in the mindset and the differences between the different, words and the different things you put in each of those 5. I think that was just so powerful, so powerful. And so, Susan, it has been amazing to have you on the show. You have given us so much powerful information, help us break down some of the things going on in the workforce in just a very genuine and easy to understand manner, and how to navigate, and just examples of these situations. I think is going to help a lot of people that either are in this process, or about to get in this process, or struggling with this process of being an effective leader of people. Yes, millennials and Gen Zs, they bring some different things to the table, but I think this really truly applies to everybody in the world today. This is just the culture that everybody has to get used to. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for all the great work you're doing and pouring your heart and soul into so many people and companies out there to help make a positive impact on everybody out there in the way that you are gifted and blessed to do. And so that um, I think you're just going to continue to do some amazing things. So we're just lucky to have you on the show today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jason, so much for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So, folks, at the end of the day, your job as a leader is to motivate and influence people. It's to develop the next generation of leaders. It's to set people up for success, right? Susan gave us an example of somebody that was struggling as a leader to engage one of their employees, right? Where they had knowledge, they had information, they had a particular title, and they were concerned about people coming up underneath them, either making them look bad, making them, you know, outdoing them, outperforming them, and in these different dynamics she was explaining. But at the end of the day, a true measure of a great leader is how well their people do. It's your job to train people to be better than you. And so you've got to get comfortable with that. And it's not about you. You're in a role, you're in it temporarily, and your job is to take those things and train the next group underneath you to be bigger, better, smarter than you, so that the world keeps on moving forward in a positive manner and we don't go backwards. And Susan really highlighted that in her 5 main principles there. So take that to heart. Really powerful lesson today. And just thank you, Susan. So that's it for today's show. Next week, we got another great show in store for you. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to build a winning culture of the future that everybody wants to be a part of, right? We talked a lot about that today. We're going to continue that conversation and even deepen that conversation with some step-by-step things that you can do and take away from that that will help you drive culture, because you can be really, really good at your job, but you may not be great at culture. You may not be great at leadership. You may not be great at a lot of those other things that surround your job and your core functional areas. So you don't want to miss that. It's going to be a great show. Everybody, have a great week.